Hello, friends. This is the Be Real Babe podcast, a place where your average Canadian wolfpack come together to talk about life stresses, messes, and successes. Each week, we will bring you new episodes sharing our experiences on a ton of different topics in hopes that we get a better understanding of ourselves, each other, and this crazy world we live in. We want to build a community where we can show up as ourselves, be real, and lay it all out there. By sharing our experiences, we hope to reach others who can relate so we can all help each other learn, grow, and heal. But please keep in mind, as a disclaimer, none of us here are professionals, no one is giving any advice. We are strictly speaking of our life experiences and for entertainment purposes only. Now, with that being said, it's time. So grab your drink, grab your joint, and let's jump right in. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to the Be Real Babe podcast. I am your host, Brandy, and today is episode 15. We have a guest episode today, and we have 3 amazing women coming on to share their experiences with miscarriage and infertility. So before we get started today, we wanted to make sure that we put another trigger warning on this episode, just in case anyone is feeling unsafe to listen, but we want to hold an open platform for our babes to talk about their experiences in hopes to help others. So just before we get started, I wanted to make sure to mention that. So let's carry on with the show. So today, our very first guest, you guys, is an amazing, amazing woman. I have just gotten to know her, but she has inspired me so much, and I can't wait for you guys to meet her. So without further ado, our first guest is Caleigh. Hey girl, how's it going?
Hey, I'm good.
Good. Thanks so much for coming on the show today. I'm so grateful that Erin connected us, because already within the little amount that we've talked about, you've already inspired me and intrigued me so much to get to know more about you. And I cannot wait for you to share your story, even though obviously I'll say now that I'm not excited for you by any means that you went through any of this, but I'm just so inspired that you're empowered to share, so that, you know, the first thing you said is, I just don't want people to feel alone and to share their story. So thank you so much for reaching out with us and inspiring us so far. Can you tell our community a little bit about yourself before we jump into your story?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know where to start, but I'm 27. I grew up in Ontario and am now living in Alberta. I'm married and I've been with my partner for 7 years now, I think. We met when I lived in Banff and I was working there for a little bit, and he would travel on through. So pretty cool life that we live, honestly. Together, we have suffered 5 miscarriages and are now going through the fertility process. So my goal, I think, in life now is just to have women be open and destigmatize it and just live their life the way that they want to live, and not feel like everything's our fault or that there's anything we could have done differently.
And that's amazing. When you first said that, I was just like, this girl is ready to share her story, and she knows by doing that, she's going to help everyone. And that's the whole idea of our podcast. So it's so wonderful to connect, even though obviously, like we said, we can't always connect in the experiences, but connecting in not wanting people to feel alone, and just kind of sharing our stories to not only kind of heal a little bit more, and, you know, being more, I don't know if you feel more like not accepting when you share stuff, but just, I don't know, it's kind of like, it's just such an honest, raw thing. I can't even explain it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It's like throughout this, I'll give you more info, but basically, like, every doctor that I've talked to has like somehow made me feel like it's my fault, or it's like I did something wrong, but like they're like, oh, you didn't do anything wrong. And it's just like it weighs on you. And it's so crazy, like, even just talking to other people who like don't get it, they don't want to get it either. Like, it's such a thing where it's so stigmatized still that miscarriage is bad. You don't talk about it, you don't anything. Like, that's it. And I just like, there's so many other women out in the world that feel that way. And I don't want anyone to feel that way. Like, this is life. It's one of the biggest things that happened to women. Like, it's crazy the statistics that are on it right now. And nobody should feel like they have to hide. Like, that's not real.
No, I totally agree. And it's so sad when you hear how many women, when you actually start talking to them and sharing your experiences, and you hear, you know, on either for myself, it was, as far as I know, one time to to the fact that you've gone through that 5 times, when you just, there's so many women, once you actually start talking about it, that have dealt with this at some point and have sat in silence. Because for myself, obviously, I don't know if you felt this way, but at first I honestly didn't even know what to say. I didn't know how to answer any questions. I didn't know how I felt. So it was like hard to, at first, to talk about it. And then I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to minimize this because there's people that go through way worse, and just kind of like carry
Yeah.
on. And then it's just like, well, that's a weird thing to do. Most people, when they go through trauma, like, you talk about it, you got to work through it. But, sometimes just like you just put these things in a quiet box because, like you said, it is so stigmatized, and I don't understand why.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I don't know where that triggered but I know that talking about it to me is only going to be one of the ways to pioneer switching that completely and changing the way society talks and how women have to feel about that. And we, like you said, we don't want people to feel alone, and you don't either. So it's such a beautiful alignment that we have, even though all stories might be different, that we just don't want people to feel alone.
Mm-hmm.
It's such an unfortunate thing. So let's like talk about it. Right. So for that being said, I'm just going to let you kind of run with your story and let us like explain to us kind of how you feel, how you've got, what you've gone through, any advice that you want to give to our community. You just run with it, girl, and you tell us about your experience.
Cool. Sweet. I'm going to start by saying, like, I've been through a lot. There's a lot of women who have been through a lot. So some of this probably won't sound like I'm like heartbroken about it or anything like that. I think I'm just at the point where I'm ready to help society fix the way that they view this and not dwell on my situation, if that makes sense.
I totally understand that. Yes, I don't love it,
Yeah.
but I love it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's such a double-ended where we're like, we're not excited about this, we're not happy
Yeah.
about this, but we are, because it's like you said, it's facts, and it's like the ways that we can work through this as a society to support women going through that, to knowledge people that could be going through that or one day might, it's super powerful. I love it. Keep going. I'm just
So my story actually starts back in 2011. I had my ovary and my appendix twist and almost burst. So I think I was in like grade 5 or something. So from there, like I obviously had surgery. Ever since then, I've had complications. I've never had a normal period. I've never had normal cramps, like nothing. All the doctors that I went and saw about it, like, you're just so young that they don't do anything about it. So I went on every form of birth control possible except for like 2 of them, I think. Like every variant, every type, except for like the one that they put in your arm and the IUD because I was too young. And so
okay.
after that, every time I went and saw my doctor, and like, meanwhile, I grew up in a pretty religious setting. And then I think when I was like 13, my parents were like, you know what? You as kids can choose to do what you want to do. We're not going to force you to go to church. We're not going to make you do any of these things anymore. So my
Nice.
family doctor was super religious. So everything was in God's hands. And it was like so frustrating hearing that. Like, I just was like, I understand, but it's not. Like, let me just have an answer. I just want an answer. And so every time I go and see him, it was, you've gained too much weight. Your chances of having a kid are 25%, 15%, 50%. Oh, you're totally normal now. And it was like that, honestly, up until I moved to Banff. Like, I was just like, I'm out of here. I can't handle this anymore. This is ridiculous. I'm just going to go live my life. And that's what I did. In doing that, I met my now husband. He is super amazing. He works in Grand Prairie in one of the oil fields. We got together, and it was rocky at first because I knew that I was going to have a hard time having kids, and all he wanted was kids. And so I was like, ugh. So I ended up breaking up with him because I was just like, I can't give him what he wants, like whatever. He told me that wasn't good enough, so we ended up moving in together. And probably about a year and a half after we moved in together in 2016, we ended up getting pregnant, and I was shocked. Like, I was just like, holy man, this never should have happened. Like, this is crazy. And I took a pregnancy test that night, and I called my friend back. I was like, you got to come back here. I can't read this. You have to read it for me. And my husband was there. And of course, a man looking at a pregnancy test, they have no idea what they're looking at. And so he's looking at it, and he's like, what does this mean? And so she came back, and she was just like, oh my God. And then he had to leave for work. So he woke me up at like 3 o'clock in the morning to take another pregnancy test just to make sure. So of course I'm like groggy and out of it. I have no idea what's going on. I took a pregnancy test. I put it down on the counter because I knew, right? Like, when you know, you know. And so I knew. And so I put it down on the counter. I was like, love you. Bye. See you in 2 weeks. Like, I'm going back to bed. And so he went away. My parents came down for Thanksgiving. They live in Ontario. And I was like, I need to tell them. Like, I have to tell them. Like, this is such a big thing. This was never supposed to happen. Like, I have to tell them. So we told them. Well, I told them because my dad kind of assumed because I said that I would drive somewhere when he wanted me to drink. And I was like, no, I'm good. Like, I'll drive. And so he kind of just put two and two together, which
Alcohol's always the
I
always the
know.
play.
But honestly, he's so naive to all of it that I was just like, man, you picked up on that quick. Like,
That
yeah.
intuition.
So we told them we went out for dinner. Of course, my dad was asking the pressing questions of like, when are you going to get married? Like, what's the next step? Da 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 da. My mom was so excited, and because they're from Ontario, she just like couldn't contain herself. So we went to, I know you're not from Grand Prairie, but Grand Prairie used to have, oh, you are,
No,
okay.
I live there.
So Grand Prairie used to have the big Sears in it. And so we went
Yep.
and we looked at all the baby stuff possible. Like, I know it's super early, but people, if you're not supposed to have something happen to you, it's like you can't contain it. You just can't hold it in. You have to do everything you want to do. So we went and did that. We went to Oshkosh Bagosh, and she spent like $200 on baby clothes. And I was like, whoa, slow down. Like, it's going to be okay. We have 9 months. Like, we're fine. And then right after they left, I ended up having an ultrasound, I think, before they even came down. So I knew that it was like a legit thing. Because I was supposed
Yep.
to, I actually was going to the doctor to find out how I could have kids. And then I ended up being pregnant. So it kind of played hand in hand. So I had my ultrasound, and then I had another one at 12-ish weeks, I think. And I went in, and the lady was just like, she didn't say anything. Ultrasound techs, I know you're doing your job, but we know when something's wrong, okay? Like, we 100% know. And
Yep.
she just wouldn't show me the screen. She didn't say anything. She was like, what'd she say? I think she was like, oh, I think you're not as far along as they think you are. Not knowing that I'd already had an ultrasound. And so I was like, okay, like,
Oh.
sounds good. So I immediately get a call from my doctor, and no, this one I had spotting. I didn't get a call from my doctor. This one I had spotting. So I think I'm getting my lines crossed. I mean, there's too many, honestly. um,
Oh, girl, that's okay. And honestly, and your brain does that too, and it
yeah,
patterns stuff
yeah.
together. Like, it's
So
all good.
no, I
It's
didn't have
okay.
an ultrasound, a second ultrasound with this one. This is the next one. I was at work and I saw like some spotting, and I was like, oh, this is weird. Like, what is this? So I call the 811 and they tell me to go to the hospital. Immediately I freak out. Like, I just white walled and was bawling. And I worked at Visions Electronics, and I like walked through the bay, and the guy who worked in there is so like manly and like macho, but as soon as he sees a woman like breaking down, he's like, oh my God, how can I help you? What can I do? Help, like, what can I do? And so he did that, and so they took me to the hospital. The doctors there like wouldn't tell me anything. I got this ancient old man, and he was like, oh, well, I don't really do ultrasounds that much, so we're gonna try one, but I'm probably not gonna see anything. Ha ha. And I was like, nah, you're lying. Like, I know you. So I went home, I called my
Yeah.
husband, well, my now husband, he's my boyfriend. Work sent him home. We went in the next day to have an ultrasound. That's when the ultrasound tech didn't say anything to me, and I was like, oh, I know. Like, I know. So I left
Yes.
there. They called me to my doctor. My doctor was like, you can do this naturally, or you can have, and this is where things get turned. You can have a medical abortion.
Yep.
Let me tell you, that word needs to not exist. Like,
That's a
yes,
strange
so that's what they call
word.
a DNC when they get down to the nitty gritty. The amount of times that I've heard this through all of it, it's like that word needs to be gone. I'm not choosing to have this, and I'm not
Yeah.
against anyone who chooses to have them. It's just when your heart's already broken, you're in the state of like, fuck off. I'm not choosing to have this. I didn't choose to have this, so stop using the word that I was taught in school that makes it that I'm choosing this. Like, I'm not. So,
Totally. It deserves its own title
yes.
and experience on its own, regardless of what your opinion,
Yeah.
not you, but like the world's opinions on either. They need to have, they're their own experience. And I agree with you. Like, that's a weird way. That's sometimes where medical shit
Yeah.
just pisses me off, where this, yeah. So I totally agree with you. And at least with the DNC, at least everyone is very associative of what
Yeah.
that is as well. Right. So I agree.
So,
It's super
yeah,
stupid
so in the
medicine.
midst of all of this, I think we ended up telling my husband's family because we were like, okay, well, we're getting super close to that 12 weeks. Like, we can probably let them know. And we told them not to say anything. And the next morning, I wake up to my phone going off the hinges. And I was like, what is happening? I had family members that I hadn't even told yet congratulating me, and I was like, what is going on? Like, how do all these people know? His brother took the photo that we sent all of them of shoes and posted it saying that he's going to be an uncle again. And yeah,
Oh my God.
I woke up Carlo and I was like, you fucking call him right now. Like, this needs to be taken down right now. There's family that I haven't even told yet. Like, hell no. And so, literally, like, days after that is when we ended up having our miscarriage. We had talked to his mom, and his mom was like, this was before the miscarriage. She had said something about, oh, I had a miscarriage once, so for all my pregnancies after that, I just remained on bed rest for 6 months. You need to do that. Stop working. Stop doing this. And I was like, no, like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I need to live my life. Sorry. And so we were in and out of the hospital. They kept telling me it was a medical abortion. So I kept being like, nah, I'm doing this naturally, which everyone to each their own. That was the worst decision I could have ever made for myself. It was awful and traumatic and horrible. Um, in the midst of all of this, his dad ended up having a stroke. So we went back to the hospital. He's like, oh, well, do you want to go to the hospital? I was like, well, if there's anywhere I should be, it's probably down there. Let's go. And we went there and
Yeah.
we told them because they were like, I mean, obviously I had no makeup on, my hair in a bun. I was wearing like, I don't even know, half torn sweats. Like, I was just a wreck. And same with him. Like, he used to get called or GQ because he would dress up all the time. So when he wasn't, you knew something was wrong. And his mom looked at me and she goes, I told you to be on bed rest for 6 months. And I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, see you later. I'm out of here. I can't believe you just said that to me. So I left. I left the hospital. I was like, I'm out. Like, this isn't happening. Carlo had some words with his mom, and we honestly haven't really talked to them since because that's probably the worst thing that you could say to someone. Yeah, so
100%.
it was rough.
100%.
And so we ended up going back to the hospital, having all of this done naturally. Like, it's awful. I was walking around the hospital because I was in so much pain, and they don't want to give you anything for pain in case they have to take you in for surgery. And it's just like all these things. And so I was walking around, and then all of a sudden I got this like huge cramp, and it just relieved. And I was like, I looked at Carlo and I was like, I feel fine. I feel completely fine. I take one more step, and in my underwear, I just felt like this nasty something. And I just like start shaking because I was in shock. I was like, what just happened? So they take me to the bathroom, and as I pull down my pants, I see everything. Like, I see the things that you don't want to see. And I'm just sitting there like, oh my God. At the Grand Prairie Hospital, if you walk down the one end of the hall on the triage side, there's the bathroom at one end of the hall, and the nurse just left the door open for everyone to look at me. Like, she had to run back to get something. And so I'm there with all of this going on, and there's people in like the where the cancer chairs are just like staring at me. And I'm like, this is nice. Like, I have no idea what's going on, whatever. So my pants were left. They gave me like the hospital pants, and they gave you like the thing that you have after pregnancy, like that diaper kind of thing. Um, and the doctor comes in, and it literally was like 10 minutes after all this had happened. The doctor comes in and he goes, okay, well, let's see. Are you good? Are you still bleeding? And I was like, yeah, like, I'm still bleeding. He's like, well, is it heavy? And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't been able to leave here to go check. He's like, oh, roll over. So I rolled over. He lifted my butt cheek, and he's like, no, you're good to go. See ya. And walked out. And I was like, okay, that's that, I guess. Like, yeah, so just horrible. So then I went and saw a doctor again, and of course they go back to the whole weight thing. They're like, oh, you probably had a miscarriage because you're overweight. And it's like, people, I work out every single day. Like, overweight or not, I eat healthy, I work out. Like, stop. We need to stop with that. Like, it's just awful. And I have,
Oh my God.
yeah,
We have to stop with that so much. It
yeah.
makes me
And like,
piss
I
right
have
the fuck
PCOS
off.
and endometriosis. I've had this for a really long time. So like, PCOS fucks with your insulin levels, so you can't lose weight. It's easier for me to gain weight than it is for me to lose weight. So like, I'm never gonna be skinny. I'm never gonna be back to my old high school ways. Like, that's fine. I don't care. But I still work out every day. I still eat healthy. It is what it is. So
But that's not anybody's fucking opinion to say that to, though. And it's especially not anybody's place to say that that
yeah,
is the reason why you are not conceiving. That is not a scientific base. That's not helping your patient eliminate reasons. That's just
yeah,
straight up fucking shaming. And I like that. And we've talked about, like, unfortunately, this, it's not, uncommon, and it's just so upsetting because you're trusting those people to help you figure out what's going on for yourself, and to just blanket statement something like that, and to not to just say that, like, health looks different on absolutely everybody, and everyone has all their different reasons. And I
Yeah.
just, it's so upsetting that that's
Yeah.
even a
No, you're
fucking comment.
good.
Sorry.
You're good.
Not to vent.
So then we got engaged, we ended up getting married. This is a little weird because I don't know exactly what timeline it fell at, but I was bleeding for a year straight. Like, not just lightly, like I was bleeding, and there was like marble-sized things falling out of me. And so I go to my doctor and they're like, oh, well, we have to get you into a gynecologist. Like, it'll take 6 months. And I'm like, 6 months? Like, I've already been bleeding for 6 months. You want me to wait another 6 months? This is insane. And so for a couple weeks, I went every single morning. I took a couple weeks off work. I went every single morning and sat in the hospital. I was like, somebody's going to do something for me. So the one doctor, he said to me, he's like, I don't know why you're here. And I was like, you don't know why I'm here? And I said, exactly, because you're not a woman. You're not bleeding constantly. You don't have to wear Depends. You don't have to do all these things. I said, you get to live your cushy life and don't ever have to fucking worry about this. And he goes, okay, well, I will see what gynecologist is on call and we will get you into one of those. I was like, I was just livid. Like, I was like, I'm done. So they got me into one. She's super great. She looked at me and she did an ultrasound right there, and she's like, oh, you have polyps. We need to get you in for surgery. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, if this is the reason, let's go. So I think it was like right before my wedding or the year after. This is what I can't remember because I was bleeding for my wedding. Like, the worst thing that you could have on your wedding in a white dress. I was wearing like Depends underwear because I was so terrified.
There. That's not for guys. If any guys are listening, we just don't want to wear white at that time. It's just, it's like a cosmic, like, if you wear white, it's going to happen. You wear any other color, any other time, but the minute you forget, wear white underwear, white skirt, nothing. Like, Murphy's Law is.
I was working in a place and they had white chairs and I wouldn't even sit down. Like, I'm not sitting on that. Like, that's not happening.
No, that's what? Let's remove white chairs.
Can we just kibosh all of this? Like, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's so like 2000.
Yeah, so I went in for surgery. She was awesome. She told me that she'd leave me a note after to let me know like what she had done and what she had found. So I wake up to this sticky note saying that she removed 3 polyps and dead fetal tissue. And I was like, what does that mean? So the nurse that I had said that she was unsure whether it was a miscarriage again or if it was from the previous miscarriage 2 years before. And I was like, okay, so technically we're just supposed to count it as a miscarriage because in their mind, there's no way that you can just have leftover tissue for that long. So I'm like, okay, whatever, sure.
Okay, yeah.
Move on with life. All is fine. So then we hit 2019 and October again, literally the same weekend as the very first pregnancy, found out that we were pregnant. And I didn't know what to do. Like, I was like, I'm excited, but I'm not excited. I'm nervous. This is the same timeline as the other one. Like, this is just too weird. Like, exact same day. Like, it was weird. And so I told my husband we had a plan to go to Jamaica. And we had to obviously change that because you can't go to Jamaica with the Zika virus if you're pregnant. And so we changed it. We went to Florida.
Yeah.
And like, meanwhile, for every single one of my pregnancies, like within the first few weeks, my boobs get large, my stomach starts to bloat, I get the headaches, I get the morning sickness, I get like the weird pains of everything adjusting. And it's like, you fully feel like you're there. Like, every single one of them, you feel like, okay, this is new. I'm in here. We're going to do it. It's going to happen. And so we went to Florida. We drove to Universal Studios on a bus. I get sick regardless. So we drove there on a bus. We get up the stairs, up the escalator of Universal Studios. I look at my husband. I was like, I'm going to throw up. And he's like, no, you're not. You're fine. And I was like, no, I'm going to. And before I could even say anything, I vomited everywhere. Like, everywhere. There's hundreds of people staring at me. Like, it was awful. It was awful. Yeah, so I ran to the bathroom. The whole line like cleared out for me so that I could go throw up again. So I was like, man, it just must be like the motion sickness with the morning sickness. Like, I don't know. And he's like, okay. So then we get back and I was like, fuck, we got to take this bus back to our hotel. Like, this is awful. The whole way back, I'm throwing up. The whole way, like head in bag. He's rubbing my back. There's people on the bus being like, mommy, that lady's throwing up. And I'm like, this is not helping me at all. So we get back. Yeah, we get back.
Shut
We took
up.
some really cute beach pictures, like just for a pregnancy announcement. I ended up calling my grandma and telling her. My parents knew only because they were like, why do you have to switch your vacation spot? Like, that's weird. And so I was like, so they knew, and I think my
Yeah.
brother knew. Like, very slim people knew. Obviously, none of Carlos' family knew because we were like, we ain't telling them ever again. And so, yeah.
No, not until
Yeah,
it's like out and
exactly.
maybe not even
And
then. Just kidding.
so we get back. I have an ultrasound. I get out of the ultrasound, and not even like 20 minutes later, my doctor calls me. And I go, and she's like, okay, so you've had a miscarriage. And I'm like, sweet. Like, I knew because the ultrasound tech, this is the one that was like, oh, I don't think you're as far along as they think you are. And I was like, I'm like, yeah, I am.
You're
I'm
like,
supposed to be
that's a
12
weird
weeks. Like, this
comment.
is my 12-week ultrasound, like, weirdo. And so I go, we find out that we have a miscarriage. And Carlos' work, like, I don't even know it's a man run business. Let's just say that. So I called him, I told him, and they deemed that it wasn't an emergency until I was going in for surgery. And so, yeah, so I had to sit for like 2 days by
Sure.
myself waiting to get in for this surgery. And so I sat and I waited. Meanwhile, I was working for a place and I was their front desk manager. And the day that I called my boss to let her know what happened, she called me back 20 minutes later to let me know that my boss had quit. And if I wanted her position, then I needed to be there for a meeting. And I'm like, yo, I just had a miscarriage. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't even know what's going on right now. And so this was on a Monday. The Wednesday, I was at her house for a meeting because I'm such a workaholic and I have such bad anxiety that's like, I can't say no. Like, I just can't. And so I was there for a meeting,
Yeah,
scheduling my DNC for the next
totally.
day, like on the phone. I look back at it now and I'm like, why the fuck did you do that? Like, why would you put yourself through that? And so I went, I had my DNC. Carlo was there. He had to go back to work the next day. And so he went back to work. So I was like, well, fuck it. I'm going to go back to work too. And so I went back to work. I was planning Christmas parties because we were like kind of in the December-ish time. I was planning Christmas parties and I was just like, just trying to push it all away, like just trying to pretend like none of it had happened. And, you know, I never got a thank you from them. I never got a, are you okay? I never got a, is there anything we can do for you? Nothing. Like it was just expected that I be there and do this. And so we had named that baby, and that baby's name was Charlie, because whether it was a girl or a boy, it was going to work out the name that way. Um, our first baby's baby A because we wanted something with the letter A to be the name, but we couldn't figure out what. Yeah. So all was
That's fair.
fine. We ended up then getting pregnant again in February of 2020. So for like the last 3 years, I've been pregnant. I don't know how many times. Like it's too much. Um, so we ended up getting pregnant February 2020. Everything was going great. Everything was awesome. We had our 12-week ultrasound, which I was like petrified for because every single one of these ultrasounds have failed me. We get the all clear. So this is during
That's
COVID.
fair.
So like Carlo couldn't come in with me. He had to wait in the car. I couldn't even like Skype him or whatever, video call him to like have him look at the ultrasound with me. And I think that was because there had been so many times that I had a miscarriage that they like flagged it on my file. And so I was like, okay, whatever. So I get the disc and I was like, I have the disc. And I like run out of the ultrasound place. Carlo gets out of the car. I'm like waving this disc in my hand and he's like jumping up and down. Like we're both so excited. Like we're at that 12-week marker. Like everything's great. We're going home. I was like, man, like we get to plan this stuff now. And we're just both so thrilled. We were about to go to a baby store to like buy our first piece of something. And my doctor calls. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
for fuck's sakes. Like, why can I never leave one of these places without my doctor calling? Like, this is ridiculous. So she calls and she goes, hi,
Yeah.
everything's fine, but I do want to see you guys like right away. And I was like, oh my God, okay. Like, so we're driving there. I'm bawling because I'm like, I know what it is. I know what it is. Like, I already know. We get there and she goes, your baby has a, I'm gonna fuck this up. Uh, hema something hygroma on the back of its neck, which is a fluid filled sac on the back of the neck which can cause disabilities, such as like a trisomy 13 or Down syndrome, stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, what do we do? So she's like, we have to send you to Edmonton and you have to get some testing done to see what it is. And then from there, you guys have to decide whether you want to continue with this pregnancy or terminate the pregnancy. So, like, if it's not enough already having all these miscarriages, now I have to decide whether I'm keeping this baby. Like, holy man, like, this is a lot. So, 2 weeks go by, they send us to Edmonton, which, like, shout out to the Royal Alexander Hospital in Edmonton and the Lois Memorial Women's Clinic. I wish I had gone there for every single one of these. So we get there. Oh, I'll tell you,
I've heard really
it's
good things
amazing.
about them.
So we get there.
Keep going.
He can't come in with me, of course. It's still during COVID. So he's down in the parking lot waiting. And I look at the screen and she goes, oh, there's a heartbeat. And I was like, okay, thank God. Like, we're past that hurdle. And then she looks again. There's no heartbeat. And I was like, what just happened? So she's, of course, like, oh, okay, the baby moved. We have to do an internal ultrasound. I'm going to get you boosted. I'm going to get you whatever. And I was like, okay. So we do that and I see nothing. I see, where the heartbeat is. I see none of that. And I was just like, okay, this is where we're at. So she leaves. And then this other lady like comes and gets me and tells me that I've had a miscarriage. So we try to call Carlo, but because it's COVID, like, fuck, I'm so over COVID. Because it's COVID, the lady sits 6 feet away from the phone. So we're trying to tell Carlo what had happened. Carlo can't even hear her. So I'm essentially just relaying everything to him. And so I was like, you know what? I'll just tell you when I get down there, like, whatever. So she told me that someone was going to call me in 2 hours and we were going to schedule a D&C. Because I was so far along, I didn't really have the choice of having a natural because it was just the size and everything, which I was like, that's fine. I don't want it anyways.
Yeah.
So he comes and gets me, and like the Royal Alexander Hospital is fucking huge. And so it's pouring rain. I'm out one side of the hospital, he's out the other end, and we're playing Marco Polo to find each other while we're both like stressed and crying and like trying to figure out what even just happened. So we go back to our Airbnb. They call me and they tell me that I'm going to a women's clinic to have my medical abortion and that I'm not going to be put out for the surgery. I fucking lost it.
Like, what?
I lost it. I was like, no, that's not going to happen. I was like, I'll drive back to Grand Prairie and go sit in the hospital there and wait for them to do it. Like, it's just not going to. And I literally like word vomited, anxiety everywhere, was like panicking, like someone get me a brown bag, couldn't breathe. This is not happening. So the lady's like, okay, I'm going to call you back in 5 minutes, okay? And I was like, yeah, you fucking better. So she calls me back and she goes, okay, yeah, she's like, okay, so we might be able to get you in for a D&C tomorrow, but you'll have to fast all night, and then you'll have to come and sit at our hospital from like 12 o'clock until whenever we can get you in. And I was like, am I going to be put out for it? And she goes, yeah. And I said, I don't care how long I have to wait, as long as I'm going to be put out for it. Like, I am not going through that. And so she's like, okay, so this is where the Lois Memorial, holy bananas, that's a mouthful. The Lois Memorial Hospital comes into play. I have a care person who calls me to walk me through all of this, to make sure that I'm okay, to see if I need anything. 3 times, and this is the first time anyone's ever asked me if I'm okay. And I was just like, I looked at Carlo looked at me, and I was like, holy fuck, someone gives a shit. Like, I'm not just another number. Like, this is insane. And so we go. Carlo's panicking because he can't come with me. They wouldn't even let him come sit with me. So I got coloring books and everything. Like, obviously I had to go to Walmart and find stuff to keep myself entertained. And so I'm there with coloring books. They come up. My care person comes up and talks to me, which I am still floored at this. And then she walks me through the process. She's like, so I just want to let you know we do offer a burial service. And I was like, what? And she's like, so you can choose to take the baby home with you and bury it. Or we have people, all of the cemeteries in Edmonton offer up plots for anyone who had had a miscarriage or an infant loss within this month. And I was like, wow. Like, I was floored because I'm like, everywhere else it was like next person. And this time I'm being treated like a human being. Like, I'm like, wow, okay. So I tell her, like, you guys do the burial service. They let us know where the baby was going to be buried, which is phenomenal. And then she goes, okay, do you have a baby, the name for the baby? And I was like, yeah. She's like, we have a Hutterite family who builds boxes and will engrave your baby's name on the box. Oh, try not to cry. Um, and I was just like floored. Like, I was like, my baby gets treated like a baby. When with miscarriage, people are like, oh, you should be fine. Like, it wasn't actually a baby. And it's like, yes, it was. Like, I know. But you hear it so much and it's so crazy. So we, yeah, we need to change all of this.
Let's change that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's change a
So
lot, but that's a
we
big
had a
one. That's a
DNC.
big,
Our
big
baby's
one.
name is Zoe.
First
She's
steps.
buried in Edmonton. We can go see her whenever we want to see her. All of that. It was phenomenal. So they tell me after I'm done my surgery, you know, don't put anything up there for 2 weeks. Don't have surgery for 4 weeks. So we were like, hey, fuck this. I'm off for a month. Like, I took medical leave for the first time ever because I was like, this is a lot. I can't deal with this. Like, the one thing that people had said to me, like the people who had known, especially like my boss too, and I look back and I'm like, why did I stay at this place? Was she was annoyed that I was leaving without any notice, which like I'm the type of person that I will give you help whenever you need it. So I wrote them like a how-to book on how to do my job, step by step, picture by picture. And that still wasn't enough for them. So they were mad that I left, and everyone kept saying to me, well, at least you didn't have to make the choice of whether or not to keep the pregnancy or terminate it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, why do you say that? Why do you think that that's like okay to say? And like, even like my family said it, my dear friends said it, and I understand where they were coming from. Like, I understand on their side, they don't know what I'm going through, and they're just trying to make light of the situation because that's the type of person that I am. Yeah,
I'm trying to find something that hopefully would bring you peace, but unfortunately,
yeah,
when they don't go through those experiences, they don't understand that that's like we understand that you're trying to be helpful. Thank you, but there's other ways to help and
exactly.
support me, and that's
So
just
we went to
that it's
Ontario
not it.
for a
It's
month.
just
We came back, and one day I'm sitting on the couch, and I was like, oh, I don't feel good. I get up to go to the bathroom, and just like blood everywhere. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what the hell? And I'm thinking, great, something went wrong with my surgery. Like, my uterus is falling out. Like, something's happening. So I go to the bathroom, literally just streamline. Like, I sat on the toilet and called one of my friends she worked for my doctor's clinic. So she was able to like help me out. But she's also just an amazing human being. She's like, what do you need? I was like, I don't have any pads or anything because I was still supposed to be pregnant. Like, I don't have anything here. And so she goes and she gets me Depends because she's like, how bad is it? And I was like, it's bad. So she gets there and she goes, you need to go to the hospital. And I was like, no, I'm fine. Like, this has happened before. I'm fine. It'll go away. And she's like, no, like, you're going to the hospital. So we go to the hospital. I find out again that I had another miscarriage. I didn't even know I was pregnant. Like, I just had one. How am I supposed to know that I'm pregnant? What the fuck? And so the doctor said something. I can't even remember exactly what he said, but I just wanted to punch him in the face. Male doctors, like, go take another course on how to be a human being because y'all are awful. Um, no. And he said to me,
bedside manner is
what
not
did he
good.
say to me? So he's like doing like his gynecological thing, whatever, like trying to get me to stop bleeding. They pump me full of a bunch of stuff. And he's like, well, you're pregnant. And I was like, shocked. I was like, what do you mean? Like, that's not. And he's like, well, I don't understand how you can be pregnant because you're supposed to wait to have sex for 6 weeks. Like, why didn't you wait? And I was like, I didn't know that. They told me 2 weeks. And then in that 2 weeks to also wait 4 weeks. Like, so in my mind, it's only 4 weeks. So they didn't tell me 6 weeks. And they said, regardless of the fact that we didn't have sex that when that ever happened. And I literally had a period ever since my surgery. So like the fact that like the one time we did, I got pregnant, like, how is this my fault? And he's like, I'm not saying it's your fault, but we need to be more responsible. And I was like, okay, like, I am done with you male doctors. I am so done. I was livid. I was just like, I can't do this. So we moved out to Calgary. I got a doctor out here. She's amazing. She can't say she specializes in it because she's a family doctor, but she basically specializes in women's health and rectifying women's health and getting us better health care. As soon as she saw me, she goes, "Nobody's referred you to a fertility clinic?" And I was like, "No." And she's like, "Okay, but you've had 5 miscarriages and nobody's done anything?" And I was like, "No, is that normal?" And she goes, "After 2, it's mandatory that you're referred somewhere." And I was like, "Okay, cool." Like, so
Oh my.
she got me in with our fertility clinic doctor, which he's great. But now we're at the point of, I just had a procedure on Friday to find out if there's a reason why we keep having miscarriages. And if it comes back that there's no reason, then we're just one of those lucky people that can keep trying and keep having miscarriages because they don't have an answer for us. So it's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
But at least it's somebody listening to you and helping you to figure out what it is that's uniquely you instead of this
yeah,
blanket statement,
yeah,
it's your weight, it's this, it's something you did. Like,
yeah.
how the fuck is that helpful to throw the blame back on the goddamn victim? Like, and I'm so I
Okay.
again, I know I'm not, I promised you I wasn't going to baby you.
Yeah,
But I am sorry that you've gone through all of this. I'll say that once. But what I'm most pissed off about, and this seems to be a fucking theme, is that I know we're not medical professionals, but you know when something's off. And so this nurse shared something saying, like, basically, for one way to make people accountable is tell the
mm-hmm.
doctor to be charting that they've refused to do this for you. Because how fucking shitty
Mm-hmm.
is that going to look when it's like, oh, this girl is like
Yeah,
bleeding. She's asked for this. I said she didn't, like, then it's your word
yeah,
against them when you're on your words. Like, make them accountable. Like, when are we going to start making people accountable? And there is, like, I was shocked for the first time I had a
mm-hmm.
decent, really good male doctor for my mental health. I was like blown away, but it's probably how you felt. But it's like, no, you need to do better. And if you don't understand women's what they go through, either through their hormonal and their reproductives, through pregnancy, miscarriages, all of that, then refer them to someone that's going to help them. Quit discrediting them, quit making them feel like it's their fault or they're crazy, and send them to the people that are actually going to look into what is uniquely
Yeah,
happening and put them in the right care of the right
yeah,
professionals. It's very simple. Very simple. Let go of your ego
yeah.
and put them to the right care. And
Mm-hmm.
then it gives you time to free up to help people that you can help, right? It's not a bad thing, but just it's a bad thing when you're doing this to someone. And look at what you've, not saying that your journey would have been any different,
Yeah,
but at least you would have had someone make you validate your feelings, to make you feel like this isn't your fault. Let's get to the
yeah.
bottom of why scientifically this
Yeah,
is
it's
happening
crazy because like I
and
just
what can we
looked
do to
at some
help you.
statistics to see if anything had been updated, but I mean Canada's statistics is since 2005. So we have no updates on proper numbers,
Oh,
but basically what they said back in 2005 is that 15 to 20% of all pregnancies end in miscarriage. That is insane to me. It's a huge chunk. And then it goes on to
that's a
say
big
women
chunk.
who have 2 or more miscarriages have a
That's a big
40%
chunk.
increase in having a miscarriage after that. Yeah.
Wow. So it's just like, yeah, see, and I think that's where we can relate on that.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I was told at a very young age that I might not be able to, and like I've obviously not being successful and gone through some weird things. It's like now with you reading that, it's like you have to be in a mental, people don't understand, you kind of have to be in that mental capacity to like take on that huge, that it
Yeah.
might not work, and then you have to be committed to, it's a hard thing that people need to get credit for. And it's really unfortunate that companies that are ran certain ways don't see the emotional support that you need. And yeah, maybe your spouse
Yeah.
isn't a psychologist, or but that's your comfort, and he should be able to be
Yeah.
there for you for at least a minimum a couple weeks. Like, whatever the doctor suggests is good for you
Yeah.
guys. That's what we have benefits in Canada set up for. It's not just for you if you break your leg or you go through medical surgery. It's
Yeah.
for your medical anguish, the shit that you
Yeah.
have to
And
go
honestly,
through
like
too,
throughout all of
or
this,
it
if
should
there's
be.
one thing that I could change, I mean, there's a million things that I could change. But if there's one specific thing, it would just be the way
Of
that
course.
public and family and friends talk to you about it. Um, like I've been through some people saying some shitty shit. I even after my first pregnancy had a friend, I'm in the hospital, still going through all of this. She added me to a miscarriage Facebook group and put on there that I had just experienced a miscarriage and they all need to love me and welcome me. And I was like, what the fuck? Like I
Ooh,
I see where you're trying to help, but I'm literally in the
ooh,
hospital still dealing with
ooh.
this. So hormones gone crazy. I probably sent her a 10-page essay on why she's a shitty human being. I later apologized, but I shouldn't have had to, but I did. But I was just like, for someone who had gone through it, like, that's not the right step. I've had friends who don't know what to say, and it's okay
Yeah.
that you don't know what to say. If you've never gone through it, I'm not expecting you to know what to say. But things not to say are, oh, well, whatever happens, happens, or it'll be fate, or don't worry, you'll get another try. Like, shut up. Stop. Stop saying that shit. That's not what we want to hear. What I
Yeah.
want to hear is there anything I can do for you? Do you want me to come over and do anything? It's the same as a new mom. Like, you're
How can
going
I
through
support you?
all those hormones and all of those changes, and you're going through loss and you're going through craziness. Like, I would have loved to have a friend who just come over and have a drink. Like, I would have loved to have laid in my bed one whole day and had someone be like, hey, do you
Totally.
need help with laundry or anything? Like, I am grieving. I am going through the damn thing.
Yeah.
Nobody understands. You feel so fucking isolated. And it's like, you're not isolated because there's 20% of women in the world who have had this happen to them. And I guarantee you it's more than 20% now. And it's just like, the stigma on it is just so, like, even for the
Oh, it
first little
has
bit
to
when I would
be.
talk to my parents, like, they would just get like closed off and cold. And it's just like, I'm such an open book about anything, like anything, that it's just like, I'm not like that. So I can sense that you're closed off and cold and don't want to talk
Yeah.
about it. And then that makes me feel some type of way. Like, that makes me feel like that it's my fault, and that, like, it just up and adds those emotions to all of it. And it's just like, we as women need to be like, okay, this happened to me. Let's get it. Let's figure out, let's do what I have to do. Let's push people to their limits into getting me the answers as to why this happened. Because us just sitting back and saying, okay, like, that's not putting us
Absolutely.
any further on this. I've gone through this for 16 years now with women's health, and it's not gotten any better. Like, sure, we have these different things that can tell us, like, I just had an
Nope.
ultrasound that
Absolutely
puts
not.
water through my uterus to tell me if it's going to expand to the right size that it needs to for a full pregnancy. Sure, we have all of these resources and all of these things, but what are we doing as women to put our foot down and say, hell no, we deserve to be treated better? Exactly.
And how are we supporting women in our community that are going through that, not making them feel alone and isolated? And that was so important. I'm so glad through this episode you were able to pretty
Mm-hmm.
much say everything that I would want to ask you, because it is important that we know how to talk to women that have been going through that. And like I said, I was like, I know you're not going to want me to baby you. And you're like, no, please don't. But then also holding space to let you feel
Yeah.
validated in your story and your frustrations in your real true life. And I think as long as you feel heard and supported, and it was the same thing like you said, I don't need you guys to we don't need any,
Mm-hmm.
nobody for grief I think can attest, you don't need someone to
Yeah.
have the answers. You just need to say, how can I support you? I'm sorry, I hear you, how can I be there for you? And in that moment, most of the time that person that's hurting is going to tell you, because they can't tell you what they're going to need tomorrow or down the road. But in that moment, maybe they just need a hug, or they need, like you said, a drink or a cup of coffee,
Yeah.
or can you help me make dinner because I'm hungry and I just don't have the energy to make food.
Yes.
And we as women are fucking
Yeah.
absolutely terrible at asking for help, especially when we're grieving by ourselves. So, just being
Yeah.
aware that when your friends are going through that, you don't need to understand what they're going through. You don't need to have the answer. You just need to love them and respect them and just say, hey, I'm here. What do you
Yeah.
need? And open that door for them to tell you, because we're terrible at asking. So
Mm-hmm.
that is how you can show up, I think. And I think that was kind of your message, as just being there and being
Yeah.
open to whatever I may need in the
Yeah.
moment. But maybe tomorrow that'll change, right? Like, don't bring me fucking
Yeah.
breakfast every day.
Yeah.
Maybe tomorrow
And
I need a funny meme and a really dirty joke, like. And so that's
yeah.
super awesome. I love that, everything that you said. I mean, obviously I don't love everything you said, but I love how aware you are and how honest you are, and that you're
Yeah.
never going to give up, and you're fighting to find out what's good for you, and you're just continually getting powered for that. And I just thank you so much for being so, like, I don't even have words to thank you about. It's like I cried. You guys didn't get to see that. This is why I can't do videos. I was like crying when you were talking. I was like literally hit my head on the microphone so many times from hearing the stupidity of things that people have said. But thank you for like sharing this and helping the conversation change.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Before we wrap up, because I honestly think we could talk for hours and I don't want to cut your story short by any means, but before we go, is there any other little bit of advice that you can give any sort of women that are going through this that you feel would be helpful to give them a little bit of hope or
I think
empowerment or like,
two big things. I think
to
one
like
of
keep
them, and this is
fucking
where I'm
going
gonna
or
cry, is
whichever.
feel however you want to fucking feel. If you want to feel hurt, feel hurt. If you want to feel angry, feel angry. If the birth date that was supposed to happen rolls around and you just want to eat chocolate all day long, do that. Do whatever you feel like, because at the end of the day, you're there for yourself. Yes, you may have a partner. They don't really know. So you're holding it down for yourself and your family and those around you. Feel and do however you want to feel. The second part to that is when a doctor says something shitty to you, call them out on it. Don't just say okay. Like if a doctor tells you that you need to lose weight,
Mm-hmm.
ask them why. There's this big thing going around right now that you don't need to step on a scale until they need to prescribe you medicine. I fully believe that, because why should my weight be something that is the reason? It's not the reason. If you as a woman get a chance, this is my chance to say how I feel and hopefully have other women feel that they're not alone and that they can do this and they can get through this. There are some shitty ass times. But at the same time, we can be advocates for the women who don't have a voice and don't want to have a voice because they're too scared. And I think you need to live your truth and you need to live your life and you need to feel how you want to feel and do what you want to do, because at the end of the day, it's you and you got it and you just got to keep going.
I love that so much. Stop making me cry. Just kidding. Thank you so much, girl. I don't love it, but
Yeah.
I really hope this isn't going to be the last time we're going to have you on this show, because you have a voice and you have a story. And the more you lean the fuck into that, it's going to just make you feel so, it sounds such a weird thing. It's like embracing your traumas and all the stuff that you're going through, but it is once you do. And I think you see that, you're seeing that more and more. And I just wish nothing but fucking the best for you. I hope you come back. I'm so glad we had this hour together. I think you're going to reach more people than you even understand. And it's going to impact and ripple out so much. And I hope you feel the ripple effect of what you're going to, what you shared today, because it's definitely hit me in so many ways that
Yeah.
oh gosh, I'm going to cry again. But yeah, thank you again so much. I'm really, again, grateful. I hope to have you back. We're going to share definitely more about your story. And yeah, thank you again for coming to,
Thank you so much for
you're going to get
having me
bounced
and
off of me
letting
here
me
in 2
use this
seconds,
as,
but
just time to
I hope you
help
enjoyed.
people.